Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you and your prayers and your support. Hope you had a wonderful weekend, by the way. I'm back live with you today. Yesterday was the Sunday sermon on Mondays. And I want to talk to you today about an approach to what's going on in our country right now that I have alluded to from time to time. I haven't really gone into great detail about it, but I want to go into some detail today about this because I think this would be helpful to us to think about. I've often alluded to what is happening in our country as the rise of an internal cult, a cult. And why do I refer to these things this way? And we're going to get into some specific issues I want to talk to you about, but because cults develop an irrational way of viewing the world, and you can't talk them out of it. Their irrational view of the world is almost always self-destructive, denies reality, makes an enemy out of anyone who does not go along, anyone who does not agree. They become the enemy, even if it's father, mother, sister, brother, near dear friends. Separate yourself from them because they just don't get it, like, defriending you on Facebook and refusing to speak to you anymore because you don't quite get it, you don't understand. See, that's exactly the way cults behave. You can't hang around your parents anymore because they don't understand. You can't be around your siblings anymore. They don't understand. You got to come away from them because they don't get it. And of course, it ultimately always leads to various degrees of self-destructive behavior. Always. I mean, you can go from the extremes to the Jonestown Massacre, where all these people drank poison, some of them voluntarily, some of them, of course, by force, but they had not been taken there by force. They voluntarily went to Guyana and set up this wonderful utopia that Jim Jones was going to give them. And then they found out, of course, that it was an absolute slave plantation. That's what it turned out to be. And by the way, that's what cults are always doing. They're always trying to enslave people psychologically, so they will do exactly what the cult wants them to do. Well, we have in our country now what I would call a leftist cult. The Democrat Party is sort of the most prominent manifestation of the cult. And by the way, this is not new behavior. You can't find anything like this among Republicans. You can't find it. But I mean, it's the Democrat Party that produced the Ku Klux Klan. What was the Ku Klux Klan? What is the Ku Klux Klan? They're not nearly as prominent. I'm sure they're KKK members today, but they don't really have any influence, and they are marginalized because society has completely rejected them. But nevertheless, the Democrat Party produced that internal cult, that terrorist cult called the Ku Klux Klan. That's what it was. It was a terrorist cult. A bunch of people who had an irrational view of life, who could not be persuaded out of it, that irrational way of life was self-destructive as well as destructive of others. And of course, it made an enemy out of anybody who didn't go along. I mean, I don't need to remind you of the nasty things, not that they started with the Ku Klux Klan, but that the Ku Klux Klan came up with to describe people who didn't go along with their philosophy, that black people were animals who you could kill just like they were ants. It just didn't matter. And if you didn't agree with that, you were a blank lover. You are not one of us. You don't fit in. You don't belong. That's the way a cult behaves. That's the way a cult thinks. And remember, the Democrat Party produced one of the worst cults America's ever seen, the Ku Klux Klan. Well, the Democrat Party is really in the forefront now of this leftist cult. And it's producing all kinds of emanations, if you will, tentacles that go out from it. And they all bear those same marks. They're all irrational. They all deny reality. They all make enemies of anybody who does not go along. And they're all self-destructive and destructive of others. I mean, those, just let me think about it this way for a second, and then I want to go to some of these specific issues. Some of you probably don't know this, depending on what generation you belong to. If you're younger, you probably don't know it. If you're older, you might. If you're, in your 60s, 70s, maybe even 50s, you remember, because it used to be a very prominent issue. The Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower Society, which is a pseudo-Christian cult, they have this viewpoint. They have this weird, irrational belief that a blood transfusion will cause someone to be separated from God. It's the equivalent of the Old Testament prohibition against eating blood. And the Bible does speak against, God told the children of Israel that they were not to eat blood, but they were actual rituals. There were cultic rituals. There were rituals of witchcraft and sorcery in which people actually drank blood. And God was warning the children of Israel that they were never to do that. Blood was spilled in the sacrifices, but the blood was never to be consumed, ever. Well, they somehow translated that into a blood transfusion as the equivalent of eating blood. And I don't want to get into the scientific issues with blood transfusions, because we know blood transfusions, like anything else in medical science, they're not perfect and they're not a panacea. But they weren't thinking of the medical implications. What they were talking about was you were committing idolatry because a blood transfusion meant that you were eating blood. By the way, I know, because obviously you all probably heard the story. My mother was a Jehovah's Witness in some certain part of that family where I never had any exposure to it. My father would not allow it. He wasn't saved, but he knew that wasn't right. He was absolutely on point. But they even had a thing going, because I remember being told this by some of the people that I interacted with, that Wonder Bread, remember Wonder Bread? I don't even know whether they make Wonder Bread anymore, but that Wonder Bread couldn't be eaten because Wonder Bread had blood in it. And if you ate Wonder Bread, you'd be separated from God. I'm not kidding you. Well, here's how bad it got. And here's why some of you would remember this. Many children of Jehovah's Witnesses died because those children needed blood transfusions to treat whatever malady, and their parents concluded it would be better for the child to die than to have a blood transfusion, because a blood transfusion would forever separate the child from God. Yeah. It's irrational. It denies reality. It's self-destructive. It's destructive of others, and it makes an enemy out of anybody who questions or won't go along. You are the enemy. The left is now a cult in America. It's a cult. Now, just think about this for a second. And these are just a few issues I'm going to bring up, but I'm sure you can think of others and other instances. I'm sure you all have heard San Francisco has now appointed to their election commission a non-citizen. By the way, that non-citizen happens to be a Chinese national. I kid you not. That non-citizen is a Chinese national. China is America's greatest adversary. Since the start of the new fiscal year, I think in October, we have counted at least 20,000 Chinese nationals who have crossed our border. I think it's much, much more than that probably, because if we're being told by the government it's 20,000, you can rest assured it's probably 50 or 60,000. These are Chinese nationals. And remember this, you can't leave China like you can leave America. China is a closed society. In other words, it is a totalitarian state. It is a slave state. Everybody who lives in China, everybody who is under the Chinese Communist Party is a slave to the state, because they can take your life, your property, they can put you in prison at a whim. You have no guarantee of freedom there whatsoever. And you can't leave without their permission. Now, they've been giving more people permission lately because they're really using that to infiltrate other parts of the world. These people aren't leaving China without the cooperation of the Chinese Communist Party. Just like they allowed people to fly out of Wuhan all over the world carrying COVID virus, the Chinese Communist Wuhan virus, as I prefer to call it. They're letting these people out so that they can come to our borders. Xi Jinping has figured out, well, the Americans don't protect their borders, so that's a great way to get more Chinese people in. They go in, they can become citizens, and they can still do our bidding. And that's not a racial statement against Chinese people. That is a political and philosophical and legal statement against the Chinese Communist Party, which knows no ethics, no morals, no boundaries whatsoever. By any means necessary is their mantra. And the people who are a part of that cult, because Marxism and communism, that's a cult, the people who are part of that cult will do anything to advance the cause of the cult. So why in the world would anybody put a Chinese national on their election board? Say because they're globalists. Well, let's consider that a little bit. Because I think most people who are caught up in this stuff like that, they don't even know what globalism is. But I tell you what, I think they do understand even better than globalism, that they hate America. That America is somehow in the way of some great utopia that could be had if only American greed and racism and social injustice, if we could just get rid of that, if we could just get rid of America as we know it today, oh, the world would just be a wonderful place. Now, again, that's a denial of reality, because when you look around the world, what do you see? You see oppression of every kind on every level throughout the entire world, pretty much. There might be some few minor exceptions. I mean, even Australia, which we consider to be part of the West, look at the way they cracked down on people during COVID. I mean, they became a police state, even worse than we did. So you look around the world, even you go to Western Europe, and the things I'm saying to you now, you couldn't say in Western Europe. I'd be fined or imprisoned. And those are supposed to be the free countries. I say homosexuality is sin because the Bible says so. The police knock on your door and say you're under arrest. I mean, I am not exaggerating. These are supposed to be free countries. Not to mention the Muslim world, where being a Christian will get you killed. So you look all over the world, it's not you can say, oh, look at the world. The world is such a wonderful place. I wish America would catch up. No. But that's the unreality that they live in. If only America could be brought to heel, the world could be such a great place. When the fact of the matter is, the world is not a far worse place because America exists. Because we have been the greatest force for liberty and human dignity and opportunity and raising the standard of living so that people are not eking out an existence. I think I told you this before, but half the world, 4 billion people, live on about $5 a day. I forget the number of those who live on about $1 a day, but I think it's like 1.5 billion live on $1 a day. The standard of living in America is so far beyond anything the rest of the world knows that it's you can't even make the comparison. But yet they'll tell you, oh, America's the problem. And so the reason why we have open borders, the reason why we put foreign nationals from adversary countries on election boards, and you have cities now wanting to have illegal immigrants who have no right to be here at all voting in elections. In Roxbury, and my church was not far from Roxbury, but I worked in the inner cities of Boston. Roxbury, it's a section of Boston. You know, Boston's broken up into neighborhoods, and Roxbury is one of the neighborhoods, a predominantly black neighborhood, about 60% black. The Melnia Cass Community Center is a place where kids did sports and played basketball. Melnia Cass was a fixture going back, I don't know, 75, 80 years in Boston. She was before my time of being there. But they have a community center named after her that the community was using for basketball and soccer and all kinds of sports. And kids went to show up and found that they couldn't use it because they had commandeered it for illegal immigrants and set up cots in there for them to live. So the community center is now closed to the community in order to accommodate illegal immigrants. No warning, no notice, no nothing. The kids arrive one day and we're told, sorry, it's closed for the foreseeable future. Now, why would a liberal city that touts its racial bona fides, we're diverse, we're looking out for black people, or as they prefer to say, African Americans, why would they close a facility that serves the very group that they claim to be so sensitive to, so aware of their needs and their oppression? Because they really don't care about those people. What they care about is their own cultic devotion to power. Look, a cult doesn't care about its individual members or its families. It cares about their adherence to the rules of the cult. It cares about controlling them, not serving them. So I said many children died as a result of not getting blood transfusions. And finally, and I think it probably in most jurisdictions now, there would be some effort to stop a parent from denying a child a blood transfusion. But do you know, from what I've read and just sort of reviewing this and seeing where we are on it now, the jurisdictions in our country seem more willing to allow Jehovah's Witnesses to pronounce death on their own child and say, well, you know, they do have their religious beliefs, then they're willing to let parents say, no, you're not giving my child hormones and you're not operating on my child's breasts or genitalia. That's a decision they can make as an adult. But right now, they're a child under my jurisdiction, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. Oh, whoa, you're a bad parent. We got to take that child from you. We will take custody of your child. Thank you very much. We don't need you any longer. It is easier, from what I've read, for a Jehovah's Witness to allow their child to die and maintain custody and control over that child than it is for a parent to say, I don't believe my child is at the age where he or she can make life-altering decisions that can never be undone, and I'm not going to allow that. They can, if they want to do that as an adult, that's on them, but no. The state will step in and say, well, you're a bad parent because your child might commit suicide as a result of you trying to hold, because it's not about the child. It's about power and control. So look, the cult hates America. If you want to figure out how to join the cult, that's the number one principle. You have to hate America. Hate America because it's racist, hate America because it's sexist, hate America because it's homophobic, hate America because it's xenophobic, hate America because it's Islamophobic, hate America because it's transphobic. Everything about this country pretty much is wrong. Hate America because America wants to deny women their reproductive rights. We're a Neanderthal nation. We're a bunch of prehistoric apes. We're crazy in this country. And we hate it. That's their mindset. There are a few enlightened people who think the way we do. All of our cult members are in agreement that this is a really bad country and we got to do something about it. It was founded by a bunch of racists and slaveholders. Joy Reid just said, once again, the ignoramus Joy Reid. Whew, wow, how can you be that stupid? But again, see, cult-like thinking is spiritual. It really gets into your soul. That's why you can easily look at life and you don't see reality. You see what the cult has brainwashed you and dictates for you to see. Joy Reid says, black people built this country. Well, that's just stupid. How in the world is it that 12, 13% of the people somehow built the country? No, the country was built by Americans of every background. Every ancestry. Did black people play their role? Of course they did. But as I've said many times before, slavery certainly didn't build America. In fact, slavery held America back. It held the South back. Slavery suppressed the entrepreneurial spirit. It suppressed the development of a lot of working skills by people who couldn't compete with slave labor and therefore had to go elsewhere in order to find work. That's how West Virginia got started. That's how West Virginia became a state. Because the people went to West Virginia and said, we can't compete with slave labor. There's no work for us because they've got the people with the money to pay somebody to do work for them. They've got slaves to do it. While the North was industrializing because they had gotten rid of slavery, the South was maintaining its genteel, sort of pseudo gentleman and ladylike culture built around the fact that we have ingrained laziness because we got slaves to do all of our work. And by the way, remember, that was a small part of the population, but those are the people with the money to employ others. And they didn't have to because they had slaves to do the work. So please. And I'm not taking anything away from the contributions that black folks have made to this nation, but I'm just saying this overblown racist view that says America was built by black people. Any cursory reading of history, you ought to know better than that. America was built by the industrial, innovative, inventive, enlightened self-interest of literally millions of people who are always looking for a better way to build a mousetrap, always looking for a better way to serve their neighbor and therefore enrich themselves in the process, of course, too. Constantly making the most of the freedom they had. And was it perfect? Of course not, because human beings aren't perfect, and therefore human beings don't create anything perfect. But it kept getting better and kept including more people. Remember, it's only been 100 years, I think it's 100 years, that women have been able to vote. This notion that women were too emotional and they were intellectually inferior to men. I mean, people believed all that stuff. I mean, it was stupid, but they believed it. Because frankly, they've been taught to believe that throughout human history. And it's only in the last 100 years that America's begun to shed that. And of course, now the feminist movement has taken it to the nth degree. And now, you know, women are superior to men, particularly if you're a woman who used to be a man. Now you're doubly superior. I mean, that's how confusing. The cult always leads you to greater levels of irrationality and greater levels of the denial of reality. That's the way it goes. And I've said before, Jehovah's Witnesses, I just happen to know more about Jehovah's Witnesses than any of these other cults, but if you study the others, you'd see the same patterns. But Jehovah's Witnesses predicted the end of the world 9 times. How many times have we heard from the climate change tentacle of the cult, because that's part of the cult too, that the world's coming to an end. It's coming to an end. What was it, 3 years ago, maybe 4 now, that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez predicted that we had 12 years left? So I think we're down to 9 or 8 now, right? So eat, drink, and be merry, for in 8 years it's all over anyway, because we are too stupid to do anything about climate change, and the planet's about to explode on us all. I mean, and you say, you might say, well, they don't really believe that. I wonder how many Jehovah's Witnesses really believe that the world was coming to an end on whatever date they set. But you know what? They espoused it. And I guarantee many believed it. I know, because I watch people who said, well, why would I go to college? The world's coming to an end. Why do I need to work? The world's coming to an end. And then when the world didn't come to an end, of course, then they had to lick their wounds and try to figure out, oh, well, you know what? We miscalculated. Let's go back to the drawing board. They did that 9 times. And finally, on the 9th time, somebody said, well, let's not make it 10, okay? Some brilliant member of the cult said, it's hurting us because, you know, people eventually might conclude that we don't know what we're talking about. So let's not do that anymore. It took them 9 times. So, look, we're dealing with cult-like thinking and behavior. That's how, and we've got all the controversy over anti-Semitism at Harvard. They got a new controversy now where some of the faculty put out a meme. I think they posted it on Twitter. Yeah, they posted it on Twitter where they talked about African people having an understanding of the Palestinian people because they're in solidarity with the Black liberation movement. And this whole meme about how Black folks are, of course, attracted to the Palestinian because Palestinian liberation movement, because we share the same concerns. And they actually go back and brag about how the Black Panther Party aligned itself with the Palestinian resistance because both were struggles against racism and Zionism and imperialism. Harvard faculty put that out. Because you see, and what do you think Harvard's going to do about that? Nothing. Because you see, the cult, even when there is pressure, just like the pressure on Jehovah's Witnesses to do away with this, you know, letting children die because they can't have blood transfusions, when the pressure is on, what the cult always does is try to mouth what they think people want to hear in order to relieve the pressure. But their beliefs are so ingrained that they are incapable of responding differently. They're so brainwashed that they're incapable of responding differently. It's like the child who's gotten caught up in some cult coming home and the parents say, but this stuff is crazy, it's wrong. And the child under pressure really finally says, well, you know what, Mom, Dad, if you feel that way, okay, you know, I get it. And then they wake up the next morning and the child's disappeared. Because all the stuff about understanding was just fake. because they've been brainwashed to the point where they say, well, mom and dad they aren't among the enlightened ones. Too bad for them. I feel sorry for them. And then they go right back into the clutches of the cult to believe all this weird, cockamamie, self-destructive nonsense. And we see where it leads. Again, always to self-destruction. Now, Harvard, I think, has got like a $50 billion, a $30 billion, or maybe it's $30 billion endowment. So they got plenty of money. If nobody ever gives again, Harvard's going to probably be okay for the foreseeable future, financially at least. But does anybody really think anymore that Harvard is the top university in America? Does anybody believe that? I mean, I'm sure the people at Harvard still do. I've got a Harvard law degree, and I thank God for it. It was a fine education because I didn't get caught up with Derek Bell and the critical race theory and all that craziness because I got saved while I was at Harvard, and that changed my whole perspective about the thing. Now, I'm into the Word of God now, and of course I stood out as the only person I knew, at least on the Harvard Law School campus, who was actually talking to people about the Lord without any apology. Nobody else was doing that. I can tell you, nobody else came to me and said, let's join forces, man. We got to get these people saved. So that sheltered me and kept me from a lot of the craziness that they would have loved to have tried to get me involved in. But I mean, I remember before I got saved at Harvard, I remember professors inviting students to come over to their houses and smoke pot with them. I'm not exaggerating, folks. It was happening. There were no barriers. This wasn't while I was at Harvard, but after I left, they ended up prosecuting a guy who started a sex ring at Harvard, where at the law school, where he was basically filming women who he basically paid to try to seduce men, then film the women, and then blackmailed the women and the men that he was going to release the videos if they didn't pay him a certain amount of money. So he had a sex ring and extortion going. He was a Harvard Law School student. He ended up going to jail. I don't know whatever happened to him, but yeah. I mean, look, there were drug dealers on the Harvard Law School campus. I knew because I knew them. And I have to tell you, folks, I would think about that and say, these are the people who are going to help lead the country. We are in trouble. And I wasn't even saved when I was thinking that. I was just thinking, wow. Just the whole unsaved rank sinner but I had enough sense to realize if these are the people who are going to lead the country, we are in trouble. In fact, and I'll never forget this, we were having a discussion one time about the future of America with a group of students. And one of the students piped up and said, well, you know what? We don't have anything to worry about because we will flood the country with so many drugs that so many people will be high that it won't even be a problem running the country and taking it wherever we want it to go. I'll never forget it. And I just thought, wow, what a demonic, I didn't think demonic then because again, I wasn't saved then, but I just thought, what an evil kind of dark view of humanity and of America's finest, presumably. So, and I mentioned what's going on in Roxbury right now. I talked about Joy Reid. I talked about what's happening in San Francisco. Oh, now, and Rob Reiner, this is part of the cult too. I said, you know, it hates America. See, the globalism is really, to me, a response in part because we know America's all messed up. We got to have something better, and all these conflicts don't work. So, since we hate America, what can we have? I'm a citizen of the world. We need one world government. We need global governance in order to resolve all these problems that America has primarily created, because that's really where they're coming from. America's primarily created it. Well, I cannot fail to mention that they also hate Christianity. Now look, they don't hate Hinduism, they don't hate Buddhism, they don't hate Islam as violent and vicious and terroristic as much of Islam is. Islam is producing most of the terror in the world today. The enslavement, the human trafficking, the rapes, the murder of Christians, particularly in Africa right now, in sub-Saharan Africa, Boko Haram, and other these terroristic cults, Islamic terroristic cults, are killing people. But the left doesn't hate them. No. They hate Christianity. They hate Christianity. And you know what? Every cult really does. Every cult has a critique of the Church of Jesus Christ. Every cult has a critique of the born-again believers. Every cult has a critique of who Jesus Christ is. They deny his deity. They deny his death on the cross. They deny that he's God come in the flesh. They deny salvation as we know it. Every cult focuses on Jesus. They don't hate each other for the most part. Now, I think the Muslims and the Hindus in India do fight a little bit, because Hinduism and Buddhism, by the way, in spite of the pictures of, they're such peaceful religions. Namaste. Well, that's a lie, too. Because Buddhists in parts of the world are very violent, and again, one of their targets is Christians. So Rob Reiner is on a tear now about Christian nationalism, and that Trump is leading a Christian nationalist movement. And they're going to basically destroy democracy as we know it. Because they deny, because they don't like America, therefore they deny or want to destroy. Either they deny it completely or they want to destroy it. Sometimes, well, America's not Christian. Founding fathers weren't Christians. And Christianity has nothing to do with America. Or they say, we've got to get rid of Christianity. Christianity is dangerous. Christian nationalism, he says Rob Reiner, is going to destroy America. We got to get rid of it. See, we Christians are being marginalized and labeled. We're not just believers in the Lord Jesus Christ to love our country. No. We are members of a cult, because, of course, the devil is the accuser of the brethren. We are members of the cult, and we are followers of Donald Trump, who is our cult leader. Now, let me say, as I'm almost out of time, and I'm going to be speaking to this in something we're calling, we've got a super PAC called Stand America PAC. Stand America PAC. You can look at the website, Stand America PAC. Now, that's not the nonprofit. Staying true to America's national destiny. It's not the nonprofit. It is a sister organization of the nonprofit that was founded to do the political aspect of our business, of our movement, of our efforts. StandAmericaPAC.us, and we got to update the website a little bit to bring in this new program. But the new program, the project for 2024, is Save America, Elect Donald Trump. Save America, elect Donald Trump. Now, having said that, let me just say, and we need your help, by the way. You can go to the website now and give. Stand America PAC, StandAmericaPAC.us. We're focusing on evangelicals and black voters, Hispanic voters where we can, but evangelical and black voters primarily. Evangelicals to answer just what I've suggested to you just now, which is an effort to demoralize Christians by saying, you Christians are supporting Donald Trump. Why, Donald Trump is a bad person. How can you as a Christian? I mean, because you're hearing this stuff already. You're a Christian nationalist, which is a way, sort of a backhanded way of saying you're a Nazi. That's really what they're getting at. You're like a Nazi. So let me just say two things. Number one is, I don't apologize at all for supporting Donald Trump as a Christian, and I have no pangs of conscience over it whatsoever. I know that Donald Trump is not perfect. And by the way, I'm not mesmerized by Donald Trump. I don't follow Donald Trump, so whatever Donald Trump says, I just agree with, because there are things that Donald Trump has said and things that Donald Trump has done that I don't agree with. I don't mind telling people. But I look at the man's track record and what he has done for America, what he did for America in the 4 years of his presidency. And I ask the question, to whom am I willing to trust for 4 years with the stewardship of my beloved country? And the answer, if you have to choose between Joe Biden and Nikki Haley and Donald Trump, the answer is a no-brainer. It's Donald Trump. Is it Donald Trump because he's perfect and everything that Donald Trump says, I just mindlessly agree with? No. No. Because I don't agree with him on everything. But it's Donald Trump because I really believe that Donald Trump has demonstrated by his track record that he loves America, that he cares about the American people, that he wants what's best for our country. I don't think for a minute it's ridiculous, the idea that Donald Trump wants to be a dictator and Donald Trump wants to end elections and Donald Trump wants to, I mean, all that stuff is preposterous. I wish he hadn't joked around with it and said, I'll just be dictator for a day. But anybody who follows him and knows him, he loves tweaking. He loves tweaking the left. And that's one of the things I wish he wouldn't do, but he loves doing it. Donald Trump has no more interest in being a dictator than I do. That's just, it's ridiculous. I tell you what Donald Trump does have an interest in. He has an interest in securing our borders. He has an interest in getting our economy up and running again. He has an interest in limiting the power of government over the lives of the American people by diminishing the regulations that we are facing. He has an interest in creating energy independence for our country. He has an interest in bringing crime under control so the American people do not have to walk the streets looking over their shoulders, wondering when they're going to be carjacked or when they're going to be robbed or when they're going to be sucker punched or when something's going to happen to them just because criminals are being allowed to run rampant and take over our streets. Yeah, Donald Trump's going to do those things. And Donald Trump is going to be a president who's not ashamed to say, I love America. I love our country. I respect our flag. I respect the Constitution. Is he perfect? No, of course not. There's only one person who walked the face of the earth who was. And that's Jesus, the Christ, the Son of the living God. Aside from him, the rest of us have feet of clay. And if by some miracle of God, I was the one who was about to be nominated and the polls were suggesting I could be the next president of the United States, guess what? You wouldn't have a perfect president in me. And if somebody dug hard enough and long enough, they certainly find some stuff they could say, oh, you know what he said then? You know what he did then? They could go, oh my goodness, I won't even start. But that's being a human being. The question is, can I trust you with the stewardship of this country? And I tell you what, I trust Donald Trump over Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton any day of the week and twice on Sunday, as they say. So by the way, let me wrap up with this, talking about cultism. They've got this guy that they like to trot out from time to time who's supposed to be, he's fair-minded and, he is willing to criticize the Democrat Party. And he calls himself, to his everlasting shame, and people have the nerve to actually call him Charlemagne the God. Now, I'm not using that, okay? In fact, I meant to look up the kid's real name. I'm sure some of you probably know it, because as far as I'm concerned, that's just a bunch of nonsense. I mean, please. But here he is on television saying something like this. This is close to a quote. So he's going to criticize the Democrat Party and the left. They've been saying that Republicans are it's going to be the end of democracy if they get elected and all of this. They say that every time. They've been crying wolf. And now that you've got somebody who is a real threat to democracy, Donald Trump, everybody's saying, you cried wolf. Nobody believes you. I mean, that's in effect what he said. So he's really smart because he's criticizing the Democrats for crying wolf when they shouldn't. but agreeing with them that, oh yeah, Donald Trump is a real threat to democracy. And I don't know how many followers he has, but apparently enough that they put him on pretty much any outlet like he's got something is significant or important to say. Lord, have mercy on us. Because if that's the kind of person the mainstream media puts up to speak as if he's got anything to say, I mean, the man is a complete ignoramus. And God bless him. He needs the Lord, obviously. Because if anybody stupid enough to call himself a God, truly needs God, and needs to know just how lowly and broken and messed up he is. So I don't hate the man or anything like that. But I mean, he's an ignoramus. The Bible says the fool has said in his heart there is no God. And this dummy goes further and says not only there is no true and living God, I'm going to proclaim myself a God. And maybe that's some kind of shtick, some kind of tongue-in-cheek. I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you one thing. It's blasphemous. It's wrong. And yet, here we are, all we Christians out here, trying to reach people. Okay, if you're really doing well, I'm approaching, I used to have over 6,000 followers on my Twitter feed. And I think it's, since I got suspended for a long time, it's down to, I forget what it is, but it's over 5,000 now. I lost some. It's picking up slowly. I got 26,000 Facebook followers, and I've got, I forget how many thousands of YouTube subscribers. They won't monetize my account because my content is harmful. And you got idiots like this with millions of people, I guess, following him, and a bunch of others. I mean, woe to those who put evil for good and good for evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter, Ephesians 5:20. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. Folks, there's the essence of the cult. What's good in the sight of God is evil to them. What's dark in the sight of God is light to them. What's sweet in the sight of God is bitter to them. They are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. And the rest of us are the fools because we don't get it. Now, there's only, oh my goodness, I'm way over. Let me end. You don't debate a cult. You deprogram them. And you try to inoculate and prevent others from joining the cult, which is why reaching our young people is so important, so that they are not swept up into this cult-like thinking that only leads, as I said earlier, to one place: self-destruction. They'll destroy the country if they could. They can't, and they won't, because God is still on the throne, and we are with him, and they can't destroy him, and they can't therefore destroy us. So I got to go. But look, you stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.